Welcome to our Japan home learning project. Week by week, we're going to be building up a picture of the physical, human, and environmental geography of this absolutely fascinating country. One thing you'll notice when you look at the overall summer term activities that there are creative projects that also link to Japan, or the land of the rising sun, as it's also known. Hope you enjoy it. Japan is on the continent of Asia. In order to get an understanding of the country, we must first get an understanding of the location it is in. These project PowerPoints are going to follow a common format. We'll start with a summary of the last session, an explanation of this one, and a peek into the next thing that we're going to learn. Obviously, this is the first one in our Japan project, so there is nothing on the last lesson. Today, we're going to be looking at where Asia is located, and then next lesson, we're going to start on our case study of Japan. Asia on a world map is, in its simplest terms, the landmass to the centre and right of the world. It is a huge area. There are 48 countries in Asia. Its furthest points are Turkey to the west, that is the border between Europe and Asia, and then we've got Kazakhstan and Mongolia in the north. The southern border is Indonesia, and the most easterly point is Japan, which is our country that we're studying. In terms of human geography, the population of the continent is huge. There are 4.5 billion people who live in Asia, which is the global majority. There are more people who live in Asia than live anywhere else in the world. It is 60% of the world's total population who are Asian or who live in Asia. In terms of oceans, the Pacific Ocean is in the east, and that is the ocean in which Japan lies, and the Indian Ocean is to the south. There is no ocean to the west, as it is a landlocked border with Europe, but in the north we have the Arctic Ocean. Right, so as a starter activity, I'd like you to have a look at the internet or an atlas if you've got one, or you might have a globe, it might be a poster on the wall of a world map, and try and plot where the following countries are on the map that is on the next slide. The countries I'd like you to find are Japan, China, India, Maldives, Nepal, South Korea, Pakistan and Oman. And a challenge activity to press you a little bit further, can you try and plot the oceans and seas that are around Asia as well? When you're getting to know an area, one of the commonest ways of becoming familiar is to learn about landmarks, famous buildings, famous mountains, famous sites and tourist destinations. What landmarks are located in Asia that you can think of? I'll give you a few. Mount Everest is in Asia. The Taj Mahal is in Asia. Tiananmen Square, which is in China. There are natural and man-made landmarks and popular destinations. What I want you to do is have a go at trying to list as many as you can and as many as you can find or think of. It doesn't matter if you don't get all 10, but because this is a start point, you probably will learn a lot more by the end of the project. Have a go. One of the things we as humans find endlessly fascinating is how rich a country is, or a place is, or even a person. Um, so the question here we've got here quite simply is, how rich is Asia as a continent? Figure you can see on the screen is of the gross national income per capita meaning per person, in US dollars. I know that Asia doesn't use US dollars in the same way that we don't in Britain, but when on a global frame we look at G.N.I, it is always in US dollars. Okay, so if you look at the key, those countries that are in red have the lowest income, and the highest income is those countries that are in green, and then you've got shades of sort of orange and yellow in between. Your task, what I'd like you to do, is to write a sentence or a paragraph, if you can, describing what this slide is telling you about income around the world. Okay, so one of the things that we have looked at here is GNI, gross national income. It basically means the total value of all of the goods or services that a country has to offer, all of the trade that they produce, all of the raw materials, basically what it's worth. And whilst the figure is for the 2008 gross national income, it is still largely true today. Countries don't, and continents don't, get that much richer in such a short space of time. So why do we think this map is useful? What does it show us about where the money is? If you are interested and know your politics, you can start to think about where all the power might be in the world. And as a way of comparing how much money countries have, you might find that there is a link between where the money is and where the power is across the world. Okay, start to put all of your ideas and thoughts together now on the next page or slide, describing the trends that you've seen of the GNI per capita of the countries in Asia. Using the gross national income map that we had in figure 1, I'd like you to take a look at Asia and describe the trends of the gross national income in those countries. So your final activity in this session is, I want you to use the evidence that we've been given and the slideshow that accompanies this, the second slideshow that you've got in this pack, to get an idea of the pictures and the images of Asia and particularly Japan, and start to put together a paragraph to decide whether or not Asia is a wealthy or rich continent or not. The challenge activity, for those of you who want to have a real go, is over leaf, and it is explained in a bit more detail. Right, for those of you who want a bit more of a challenge, I'd like you to put your answer in terms of a response to the statement, Asia is a wealthy continent. In your response, I'd like 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph explaining why you agree with that statement and using evidence that you get from your own research as well as the evidence that's on the GNI diagram. The second paragraph, I'd want you to explain why you disagree with that statement and using those sources to find evidence that says it isn't a wealthy continent. And then third paragraph is your conclusion. I want your opinion, your decision on whether or not Asia is a wealthy continent and your statement of why. So not just putting I agree with this statement. You got to put I agree that Asia is a wealthy continent because in financial terms, in terms of culture, whatever terms you want to use, although the evidence that we've got so far is around financially wealthy. And these are the reasons why I believe that it is a wealthy continent or isn't, depending on which one you decide. Okay, so as the review, just to give yourself an indication of where your mind was at the start of this project, just put your initials somewhere on this scale of whether you agree or disagree to the phrase Asia is a wealthy continent. If you really haven't made up your mind, if you're 50-50, put your initials slap bang in the middle. If you really strongly think that Asia is a wealthy continent, put it over to the left by the agree and scales in between. It'll be interesting when we finish looking at the project and we've added things like cultural capital, nature, environment, all of those other things into the mix, whether or not you still think overall Asia is a wealthy continent. Right, we've come to the end of session one, and one of the common features that you're going to find on these slideshows is I've created a blank space at the end for you to make note of any interesting websites or other resources to find out about Asia and to complete your activities. The reason why I think it's important for you to write those down in this blank space is over the next few weeks you may have reason to come back to them, and it's going to be much easier for you to do so if you've got that reference. Also, when we come back all together in school and have a look at these projects and have a look at what each other has done, there may be things that you write down that somebody else who might do the project in the future would want to know, or anyone who wants to revisit any of the things that they've put in. So it's a really good practice to end sessions where you've done a lot of research and actually putting together and making a note of those sources that you've used. Okay.